Right, so as our headlines remain dominated by world events and the Tories being evil and incompetent, paving the way for the establishment favoured Keir Starmer, Starmer is certainly proving not to be favoured by not just many of us ordinary members of the public, and not just ordinary members of the Labour Party either, but elected representatives of the Labour Party too, as an unheard of fourth council loss in as many months outside of local elections has just happened. And this time it might not be entirely to do with Starmer's ongoing refusal to back a ceasefire to end the killing in Gaza, because there have been issues in Hastings over the last year or so already with interference from the top of the party, and the statement issued by the Labour leavers themselves implies that things might finally have boiled over there. Right, so for all the mainstream news outlets and polls that are singing the story of a Labour lead, a Labour landslide on the horizon, the party of government in waiting possibly, behind the scenes, Labour is continuing to crack up. A fourth council is now no longer Labour run, and it is not altogether clear how they'll move forward from here there either. 6 councillors have resigned the Labour whip, and although one has very much issued a statement in relation to Starmer's position on Gaza, the problems and tensions in Hastings have been rumbling on for quite a while. You see, Hastings Borough Council last held its local elections in spring of 2022, and it's a 32-seat council, and Labour in 2022 won 15 of the seats, so it was just shy of majority control, which it had held before. And the reason it had lost control was the Green Party, who had increased their representation on the council then from 3 to 5 councillors. So in order to put together an administration, the Labour group went into coalition, went into a cooperative with the Greens, giving them a working majority of 20. The other seats on the council, incidentally, are held by 11 Tories and 1 Reform UK councillor, themselves formerly a Tory, who apparently got kicked out by the Tories. Goodness knows why. You therefore had on the face of it a progressive administration here. Labour and the Greens, heavily influenced by the Greens, needing Green votes to get stuff through. Certainly the alternative appears to have been far worse. Who could possibly have a problem with that? Cue Keir Starmer and his sidekick, the General Secretary David Evans, who, as a pair of red Tories, well, very definitely had a problem with this, along with the leadership that they run. Things have been working perfectly well with Labour and the Greens running things up until October of 2022, when Starmer and Evans, or whoever they had put in charge of this little incident operation, certainly the Labour leadership somewhere along the lines, decided to interfere. Now, as part of the coalition between Labour and the Greens in Hastings, 2 of the Green councillors were portfolio holders. But the diktat then came down the line, with the Labour council leader Paul Barnett apparently being threatened with expulsion if the 2 Green councillors as part of this cooperative were not replaced. Therefore, the cooperative that had been working up until then had to be dissolved. With 15 seats, Labour was left short of overall control, a situation that was resolved, and evidently the Labour leadership up the line were much happier with this, by going into a cooperative arrangement with the single Reform UK councillor, the Labour mayor's casting vote to get their agenda pushed through. Labour made itself, therefore, completely beholden to Reform UK in Hastings, having to keep their vote to get anything through, all because of interference from up the line. I can only imagine how disgusted some of these Labour councillors, having had a working majority, flexibility with it to an extent, a progressive approach to local politics thanks to the Green influence, and I would hope decent socialist Labour representatives too, completely run roughshod over by the red Tory team that took over from the Corbyn administration, and for whom working with Reform UK, the too right-wing even for the Tories party, the party which is really a private company owned solely by Richard Tice, and for whom Tice and other leaders in the party all work for Rupert Murdoch's Talk TV. Just who exactly is in charge of that bunch? You, of course, try to make it work for the benefit of your constituents, don't you? This is the hand you've now been delivered, thanks to your bosses up the line, to serve them and the community to meet their needs. You try. But at no point did Starmer and co give a stuff about that, clearly. They just didn't want to see Labour working with the Greens, presumably because they'd lost seats to them. Well, that's democracy. Suck it up, Buttercup. Any chance of progressive politics died a death the moment a Reform UK councillor, singular, was put in a position by the Labour leadership, in effect, to be able to call all the shots, or they won't be able to pass anything. Therefore, I can totally see this situation having boiled over to the point 6 Labour councillors have now quit the party, forming a new independent group, Hastings Independence, and quite literally throwing control of the council now wide open. Among the 6 councillors to quit is the council leader himself, who was apparently threatened with expulsion, Paul Barnett, the deputy council leader as well, Maya Evans, and 4 others. Their press release, which is brief, reads, "After long and careful consideration, we have made the difficult decision today to leave the Labour Party and become independent councillors. There are many reasons, but our view is that standing up for Hastings and our residents will be much easier as independents. The National Labour Party no longer provides us with the policies, the support, or the focus on local government that we need, given the issues we are committed to tackling. We will now concentrate on standing up for Hastings, to work in partnership with all those who are passionate to drive our town forward and our work in our communities, which is why we all became councillors. As a group, we will not be making any further comment until the new year." Signed, Councillors Paul Barnett, Maya Evans, Andy Batsford, John Cannon, Ali Rourke and Simon Willis. It does very much sound like these councillors have found themselves tied to having to vote a certain way and not how they wanted to best meet the needs of their constituents, hence why they now say it will be easier for them as independents to represent their residents. And that, to me, does sound like they've been sick of effectively having to take direction from entities that they didn't desire to, such as Reform UK, at the demand of a leadership they don't agree with, as the criticism of the National Party shows there. Totally correctly, in my view, I agree wholeheartedly with that sentiment, to the surprise of absolutely nobody watching this video, I'm sure. Councillor Maya Evans herself issued her own statement as well, despite the group saying they wouldn't be collectively commenting further until the new year. She really went for it. I think this bears out much of what I've already covered here. I won't cover the whole statement, certainly. It's much longer than the group statement. But here's part of it. Over the past few years, it has become increasingly apparent that the Labour Party has moved away from its core values and principles. To woo the Tory vote over the Labour vote, the Labour Party has lost its way, leaning into right-wing policies and rhetoric which has become increasingly difficult to publicly justify and support. Locally, we have been micromanaged by Westminster-centric, unelected Labour Party officials who have barely visited Hastings, let alone understand the town and its residents. The National Party has denied Hastings members the right to select their own parliamentary candidate and selection of councillors. And there is now a well-established national pattern of the Labour Party blocking people of colour from leadership positions. It appears unelected Labour officials have a very fixed idea around who is electable. Sadly, this tends not to favour people of colour, working class people, or local people from the community. I have personally been blocked by the Labour Party from standing as an MP and also to restand as a councillor. The reasons given were spurious. Labour's policy position on Gaza has been completely unforgivable, from not supporting a ceasefire to silencing politicians from speaking out, expelling an MP, unofficially instructing councillors not to attend peace marches, and enforcing a 3-line whip which led to the resignations of 10 shadow ministers. To date, 18,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza, 7,000 of which were children. To stay silent is to not support humanity. I think she's hit several nails on the head there. Several reasons, particularly, that perhaps the Hastings Independent don't want to collectively speak on at this point, but may well come on to later. She did allude to there being a number of issues, as did the collective statement. A genocide-supporting racist party, no longer on the side of ordinary working-class people, that discriminates against anybody they deem problematic, particularly people of colour as well, and will find reasons to deal with such people so as to remove them from being a problem. The purge of members has been the dominant story. We know how that feels if we've been on the left of the party and we've been facing that kind of a treatment from them. But the purge of decent representatives is another side to this story entirely, one that has not been well publicised, and if anything has been even more vicious. So where does this leave Hastings Borough's Council now then, Damo? Well, Labour are reduced to 9 councillors. They have no chance of forming a majority administration at all. The Tories are now the largest party with 11 councillors. I can't see anyone going into a cooperative with them. So the Labour Party's own actions, their own drive towards Blairism, Tory-lightism, has effectively crippled this council. The Tories can try and form a minority administration, so could Labour. They'll both find it incredibly hard to pass anything that isn't progressive, though. So perhaps in doing this, the Hastings Independents have actually forced their former party's hand, no longer being able to rely on the bidding of, or doing the bidding of, perhaps of Reform UK, but having to win independent and Green votes now on a case-by-case basis to get anything passed. Well, we shall see what happens, won't we? I'll be very interested in what they have to say in the new year, though, of course. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share and subscribe if you did. More content out daily as ever. Please do have your say on this story in the comments below and be part of the conversation. Meanwhile, here's a video recommendation covering the collapse of the Labour Party's control of Norwich City Council, the last administration it lost control over. And I'll hopefully see you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.